Hi everyone. Today I thought it would be fun for me to show you how to paint a tulip. I've already painted some of the petals on it, but painting in reds or in purples can be very challenging. You go extremely dark, extremely light too quickly. And so I have my colors out here. I have everything planned out. I've worked through everything. And so that I'm going to be able to show you how to create these two petals. I'm also going to show you how to add interest to a background after you've painted something. Because sometimes, you put a flower on a canvas and you're like, oh, it looks kind of plain. So we're going to do a little bit of stenciling. Um, I have my stencils right here. So let's start out by saying that this is a fairly large flower. And yes, I do have a packet for this, an instruction packet. It has all the colors, the line drawing, and instructions on how I painted it. And so my thought just went completely blank. So what I wanted to say is, I've got all these colors, so you don't have to worry about getting too dark too quick or too light too fast. And I did create this on a 12-inch canvas. You can put this on a smaller piece, but or larger. But remember, when you make things really small or make things really large, it changes the level of difficulty because you have to cover either smaller or larger areas. So we're going to get started on this. And this is a little bit challenging. I came in and I base coated it with what I call the mid-tone color. I want you to preserve this. This is going to be a little bit curved in here. And when you make things concave, like in here, you reverse your lights and darks. And I almost always use an upper right-hand light source. It's my preference. So we're going to have a lot of dark in here. Do not lose your mid-tone. But don't worry if you do. I'm going to show you. We're going to bring back another accent color to add so much vibrancy to this. Another challenge about creating a purple tulip is they're so unique. They almost look like velvet. And so they have these red tones in them and these blue tones in them. And I think I've been able to capture that. I'm going to share it all with you. So I'm going to start out and I always try to make it as easy as possible. So we're going to dry brush first, and then we will come in and shade with our flat brush. And I'm going to use a domed round blender. This is by Jasonia. It's a number 6. I also used to have a line of brushes that were domed round blenders. You can use those, the Debico brushes. And so whatever brush you have, just make sure it's a little bit fatter and it's a little bit shorter and it comes to a point. That is what's going to really help you. So I've got my darkest dark out here. And you can see that I am loading my brush and then just taking a lot of it out. So I don't have too much paint here. And I'm going to scoot this all the way down. I hope you can see the division line here. And I'm going to come in and I'm just filling this in. Now these brushes hold a lot of paint. And I absolutely love the Jasonia brushes. If you have a different type of brush like this, you use what you have. I don't want you running out and buying different brushes just because I'm using these. As long as they're shaped similarly to what I'm using, you'll be fine. Okay, so you can see I'm bringing it all the way out. And that's what's really tricky with acrylic painting, is getting the size of the shade that you need. Now I'm going to really quick go back underneath here. And I'm on the lower petal now. Whenever I'm painting a flower, I really make sure that I work in stages. And what do I mean by that? I put all the first shades in, all the first highlights in, because then I make sure that everything's balanced. Now, I'm not too worried about the outside edge. So if it doesn't look like I'm combing all the way out, that's okay, because what I want to do is just make sure I'm going to get my width of color, and then I'm going to come back in with my flat brush and add another coat on here. There's this little area here, and we're going to just take a round brush really quick. Let me grab a round brush. And we're going to fill that in with this dark color right in here. It's just an area that's curving. And so it's getting a lot of shade. Can you see that? Right up there. Okay, so this, you can really see that it's already starting to take some form. So now what I'm going to do is a little trick of mine is I've got my base coat color here. In order to clarify your brush or to neutralize it, or basically get the color out of it that was in there, so you can go into the next color, and I want to use the same brush. What I do is I just load the color that was underneath it into it. So by putting the base color in here, I can neutralize my brush. I'm also going to just skim along the edge of where I put in my dark. And what's that going to do? Well, right here, I can see I have somewhat of a harsh line, and I'm not sure if you can see that. But by coming in with my base color, I can soften it. So while in oils, you would be able to just blend those colors together, with acrylics, if we're not doing a blending, more of a layering technique, which is what I am showing you, then we're going to have to layer another color on top of it to make it look like it's been blended away. And that's what I just did. It's very important that you don't use harsh values, how light or dark a color is, when you're painting with flowers. So now, because I have neutralized my brush, I can go right into the highlight color. So what I'm going to say is, because we're going to have our mid-tone color here, the light's coming in and it's going to be hitting a lot up over here. So I'm going to just bring this down. We're going to have some more shading here. I'm going to bring it up. I want to keep my midtones. But then I'm going to start going up. Any of these areas that are coming in, those are going to be areas that are raised up. So when you see how much time it takes to paint these two petals, you'll understand why I did a little bit ahead of time. Because something this size, and when you're painting realistic, it does take time. So now you see I've got an edge right there, so I'm going to go right back in to my base coat color and soften it away. And if this doesn't soften it, later on, I will show you another way to soften it. So we're starting to see a little bit of light, a little bit of dark. I'm going to go right back into my first highlight color. And we're going to I'm not going to worry too much about ripples right now. We're just going to get this whole edge lightened. And again, if I can't come to the edge with this brush, then I will use my flat brush. I haven't done that yet. And because I am doing the acrylic layering technique, I always put in more than one application of each color. So now I just had highlight, touch dark, and there's some times where that's okay. But right now I'm going back into my base coat color and blending that away. Okay, I'm going to rinse this brush out and then use it again. So I just want to get all the paint out of it. So basically, when you're using these dome round brushes, for my techniques, I'm normally using a dry brush technique, and that's why there's no water in them. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to set this paper towel to the side that I'm using for dry brushing. And then I'll get a fresh paper towel that I don't care if there's water on. And we're going to do getting my flat brush. And if you ever have trouble with your brush, it may be because you don't do what I just did and blot your brush on your paper towel first. So I corner loaded it, and I'm just simply going to be floating or side loading. But basically what you do is you load a corner of your brush and just let it fade away from paint, opaque paint, to water. So did you see how I just cleaned up the edges of this petal? And then I'm going to do the same over here. Now I'm floating, side loading, and I'm applying the same color as I did. But now what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to go behind this petal, because I knew with that dome round brush it wouldn't have given me enough control. And then I'm going to go right back into that dark area. For those of you who do not know how to side load or float a brush, I do have a variety of technique videos here on my channel. So please go and watch those and practice. If you spend just a couple minutes every day practicing how to float, you will be an expert in no time. So you can see this shade is pretty much on an angle. But what I'm trying to do now is bring it up along that edge without taking away from my initial base coat color. So I have light, base coat color, dark. And the same thing, I have light, base coat color, dark. We have 3 values now. And I'm also going to go in and side load with the highlight color. Now what you're going to see is how much brighter it is when you side load. It's just going to blow your mind away. So dry brushing, really, because you have a very small amount of paint on the brush, it is somewhat transparent. And so when you go back and you float over the top of it, it almost looks like it's a brand new color, but it's the same color. It's just more opaque. Now I'm doing what's called a tornado float or a triangular shape float. These are a little bit difficult. You can always dry brush these in with a smaller dome brown brush. Okay, we're going to let that set up. Make sure you can see that nice. So you can see we have a lot more layers to do here to get to where we were. It's kind of fun having these different steps next to each other, because then you can see how different they really are. And I always refer to the first stage painting as the ugly stage. I don't know if that's a nice term, but it's not nearly where we want to be. So what I'm trying to do is just really grab the edge of these petals over here. And then I'm going to just pull it down a little bit. I will create some ruffles on there. You have to trust me with them. Okay, I think we're at a point where we're going to let this set for a little bit, and we're going to do some stenciling. I have this stencil, and this is by Copper Distributing, or Chris Hoy, who is another brilliant artist. And she has her own distribution of all kinds of supplies. So she creates designs, and she also creates stencils, and she creates her own brushes for the stencils. And I wanted to use the big one to begin with. What I like about these is they're a softer hair than most stencil brushes. And I find that it's easier to do a dry brushing technique, but no matter what brush you use, if you do not load it properly, you're going to be in big trouble. because what's going to happen is it's going to bleed underneath. And I've heard lots of my students say, the paint always bleeds underneath. So let's talk about this. What we're going to do is we're going to load it into our full strength paint and I really push it in there to make sure the paint's in there. But just like with dry brushing with the dome round brushes, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and really make sure we take a lot of paint out. So you can see that was full strength paint. Here's our residue of paint, and that's what you're looking for. Now, yes, it may take a little bit more time to dry brush. I am not going to use these, so I'm going to just put my hand over them. And what I like to do is when I start with a fresh coat of paint, and I hope my arm's not in the way, I like to start pouncing to begin. Why? Because it's harder to have the paint bleed when you're pouncing. And I want the outside edges to be the darkest. And then in here, I'm going to use my circular motion. This is your traditional dry brushing motion. And I absolutely love how nice and soft it comes in with these brushes. I generally will not use a brush and show you a brush unless I feel as though it's unique or different. It makes a difference in your end result. I don't sell these. I get nothing for them. Now, voila. So now I really want to make sure I fill in that space. So let's line up this. I'm going to fill this in. I'm having to press a little bit harder because the paint is drying, but you can't tell. And then let's see if I line this up, if there's another one over here, just a part of it. Okay. Oh, that looks nice. I like that. I like the color with it. Okay, let's see if this is dry here. It is. So we're going to do more stenciling, but I have the stenciling to do in between applications of paint. So now what do I do with this brush? Because I want it to stay dry, but there's paint in it. If I let the paint dry, it will get ruined. Well, I'm lucky that I have 3 different sizes of this. So what I'm going to do is another thing you could do too is you could wrap it with a damp paper towel to keep it moist. But I'm going to just rinse this out for now because I know I can use the smaller size too. Okay, so we're going to go back in here and I'm going to get my dome brush that I had rinsed out. And I'm thinking that I want to build up my highlights a little bit more with the dry brushing. So I'm using the same color. So only this time what we're going to do is we're going to go up to where we started the little ripples and we're going to pull them down. I don't want this to grow. That was a little bit wet, so I'm going to just pounce a little bit. And let me just break some of these. And I'm going to just start streaking these down a little bit. Paint. This particular flower had a lot of texture in it. And I love that with tulips. Sometimes you can get them when they're opening like this. They have a lot of ruffles in them. Okay, let's see if this is dry. So I'm hoping you're able to see when I put this in the second time, how much bolder it is, how you can see it a little bit more. So what's happening here is I'm getting myself in trouble because it's not drying. So I'm going to let that sit up. Because all I did was lift it. But now I need to go back over here into my base coat color and soften the edge of it. I'm always softening that color. That way there'll always be a bridge between your light and your dark. And that's what you want. I think sometimes I actually create third and fourth values by doing that, but that's okay. So I've got a lot of holes in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come in and tap in some highlight. And this is because it was not dry. And I like this when this happens when I'm teaching so that you can see, oh, yes, it does happen to even me who I've been dry brushing for like 30 years. But there's always a way to correct things. So we're going to just let that set up. And we're going to come down over here. I'm going to rinse out my brush because I'm going to use it again. Now my dry brushing brush, that one was just way too big. So for it to dry. So I'm going to go into my other brush. I'm just looking up over here, and I think I want to have this part right here. Making sure I'm using the same towel that I used for dry brushing. And I just loaded it, so I'm going to pounce. And what you're going to see is this is going to be a little bit lighter because that's already dried. Okay, then we're going to come over here. I'm going to put my hand over the one area that I don't want to. Yeah, I could also put tape on here too, but as you move back and forth, then you have to move the tape. So I'm going to just reload my brush, making sure I don't have too much paint. I'm going to come out over here, make sure I'm on screen again. And I'm doing my pouncing because I just filled my brush. And I can tell you that because this is a smaller brush, I don't have to pounce as long. And I'm probably going to have to reload. What's the difference? Just the amount of hairs. But having smaller brushes, she has 3 different sizes, and it really comes in handy if you have small areas that you want to stencil. And because this would be really a big brush to go into, let's say you were just stenciling the center there. So it's nice to have a variety of sizes. I'm running out of paint. Okay, let me reline these up. You have to be careful because if it's really wet, I could smear it. And then let's see. Okay. I also want to line up another one over here. That's nice. So we have both corners taken care of. So what I'm going to do with this one this time is I'm going to come to my paper towel that I've been floating with, and it's all wet. So what I can do is just wipe out all the paint because I want to be able to use this one again. So it's wet, but it's just damp. So I'm going to get the paint out. And I'm going to set it to the side. And then there's enough out of there where it won't dry and ruin the brush. Okay, let's see, where are we? On the petal now. So we're building our lights up, and I had a little bit of a problem with that highlight there, but looks like it's dried. So what I want to do is I want to go into just a little bit smaller brush. I'll go into I was in a 6, now I'm going to go into a 4. I'm going to just dry brush over here really quick to make sure that it's all smooth and even. And I want to really soften my highlight away. Now we're going to go into the next highlight. And I have big jumps, big value jumps with this painting. So make sure you keep it nice and light. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus in a little bit on the ripples. And did you notice how I came down to this particular petal so that I allow that to dry? Because that's really having, even though it's looking dry, it's starting to lift on me a lot. So I don't know what's happening with that, but we'll just let it settle down. And we'll pull these two together. And that was a little bit wet. I'm not sure if you saw that. And I'm going to just let this blend away. So nice and soft. So I'm going back into my original first highlight, and I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing over here where we're going to pull these down. So I'm sure you're able to see these. Unfortunately, when you're working with a little bit darker colors, sometimes it's hard to see each little individual change. And I hope you're able to see everything okay. Okay, so now I have this red out here. It's really a red violet. What I want to do is I want to go in the midtones. You know, in the beginning when I said how there's this deep red that just kind of shows up if you're really looking at it, and it looks like it's kind of glowing through. Well, that's what I'm using. And I'm putting it in the midtones. You can see how I have it here and here and over here. And it just adds some life to the petal. I'm going to do the same thing here. And I really want that red back over in this dark area here. It's going to help separate the two petals, but also we'll be coming in with some other tones that will also help separate. And I'm just stroking it back and forth. Let's put a little bit up here. I'm liking that. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into my highlight color. And let's just stroke a little bit here. Bringing it down just a little bit further. That red's still just a little bit wet. I like that really well now. Okay, I'm gonna add some more light here. So if you notice, I started out very dark and we're getting lighter and lighter. And that's because I want it to keep it dark. Okay, that's that brush out. I'm going to go back into my flat brush. Switch into my wet paper towel. So what I want to do is I want to emphasize the ripples a little bit more. So rather than going into my dark color, I'm going to go into my base coat color. And in the areas where it goes in, I'll just put a little bit there and then pull it out. It's just going to make it look like it's going up and down a little bit more. And with the red there, I don't think I need that over there. But what we'll do now is we'll go in with this light color and we're going to just float it in. Did you see when I flip my brush over how light it got? So I always make sure that I blend it and I go back and forth like this. And again, adding the layers builds these colors. We build layers very, very softly when we're painting realistically. There's a lot of artists out there who paint beautifully and they do what I call whimsical realism, where it looks lovely, but you're really not painting it realistically. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. Some of my favorite artists paint like that. Okay, well, it looks pretty wet now, doesn't it? So let's do some more stenciling. I've got this other brush, or stencil from Copper Distributing. And pretty sure I want it laid that way. And I've got this brush, and it's doing pretty good. Nothing has dried in it. And again, I'll start by pouncing. And then I start using my circular motion. You see that I'm using my hands to keep it in place. If you're at home and you're not teaching a YouTube video, it's really good to take these down. I just like it because it's just much faster this way and I can easily flip it around. But it can also easily slide. And if you slide, then it's a real pain. And so what I'm doing is I'm just making sure I'm covering all the areas before I lift my stencil up. because it is hard to just lay it down perfectly. Okay. So that was a little bit on an angle. And I'm going to do is flip it around this way. I think, oops, like this. This was not my intent. But since I did this, just trying to line it up so I can go the reverse way now. And hopefully it will work just fine. We'll see. I'm going to keep it really light. I'm not going to bring it down too far. Okay, that's fine. So now let's see if I can, first let's see if this is all nice and dry. It is. And I hope you see what I just did with my finger. Put my paint in, my finger in the paint somewhere. So if I take really quickly and get it off. So sometimes afterwards, you'll be done painting and you're like, oh my goodness, where'd that paint come from? Well, in that case, you do have to repair it. But in this case, I was just able to very lightly take it up. And so again, that was a nice happy accident. So I could show you how to do it really quickly. And then we're going to come back over here and we've already put some red tones in. What I want to do is take my flat brush and put some more red tones in because these are so pretty. And again, I have all the exact colors in the instructions for you. So you can see this is fairly wet. And a lot of this red is just going to dry very transparently. This is a color that is known for its transparency. That's why I chose it. Finding it hard to find a clean place on my paper towel. Okay, let's bring some more red up in here. And then we'll do some more dry brushing. Because once that dries, you're going to see how rich and how pretty it is. Like right now, it just looks pretty wet. But it really added so much to it. Okay, so let's dry brush over here. And I have a line of sight coming this way. Only this time I want to keep it right on the edges. It's hard with a canvas. This would be much easier with a canvas panel. Okay, and I have my same brush that I've been using. I am going to pounce next to where I put the stem in. So I don't get too much on the stem. What I like about these brushes too is like as you start running out of paint, because they're softer, if you press on them, you can just squeeze that little bit out that you need so you don't have to reload. If I could have a tube coming in my brushes, so I wouldn't have to spend the time stopping and reloading my brush, I would love that. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. Only look what I did. I got my stencil in this paint. Oh my goodness. So we will just grab a paper towel really quick. I'm wondering if that's where this came from, Tim. Possibly. Open it really quick. Now, if that would have dried, that would have been a problem because that it would have had a texture to it. So I would have had to actually sand it. But I think that's looking really pretty. It's really framing the flower a lot. So, got a clean paper towel. And we're going to go in and put some blue in. Actually, it's really blue violet. And this would, I really think it's the blue that gives it this velvety look. I can tell my red is still pretty wet. And I just noticed that I get a little bit of red over here that wasn't there before. I'll dry that off really quick. So I'll very carefully bring in this blue violet to show you how pretty it is. As a matter of fact, we will zoom in. So you remember when we first started how this pretty much looked very flat. And now it's catching up to the other petals. One step at a time. Okay, and then one area I really want to do is right back over here, and I want to keep this nice and light. And then I just want to pull just a little bit of blue here and there. I want to separate this edge over here. We even put a little bit on the edges. And make sure I keep this nice soft. And if it comes in too thick or too much, you can always use this side of your brush, the water side, to clean it up. I do like going on the edges of my ripples with this blue color. And then I pull them down just a little bit. If this blue gets too bright, and after it's dried and you're like, no, I don't know that I like it, just take some of that red color and soften it with the red color. I'm going to go up to the top. And just a little more over here. A little bit over here. So that just really separated those two. Maybe just a little bit more in here. Okay, I'm thinking that looks good. I went a little bit more blue over here. Sorry, I lost my remote. I'm in the middle of a move. And when I moved, somehow my remote disappeared. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, is this balanced? Do we need more depth? Well, what I'm going to do is just take black and we're going to glaze that. I do have a video on glazing, but all it is it's the same as floating, but you work it into your brush so much, it's totally transparent. So you see how light that is? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come into our darkest of darks. Areas where I really want to separate, cast a shadow. And what I like about this is you can keep going a long time. I just realized I didn't do the stem or the stamen. Let's do that stamen. So I am just adding some more darks very lightly with a glaze. And I always do this at the end. And that's why I didn't do it to the other petals. And it may not be easy to see it, but it's definitely there. Okay, let me put out 3 colors. And we're going to put the stamen in. Hoping these colors will work perfectly. Okay, I'll just use one of my dirty, I'll use my number 6. The dome brown, the dome blender. I have a hard time saying that. Sorry, girls. Okay, we're going to go right here and we're going to put in a little stamen. So I'm going to just stipple a little triangle area. Okay. And then what we're going to do is come in with a round brush or a smaller brush of some sort. I think I want to make that just a little bit bigger. Just a little fatter is what I wanted it to make it. Because a lot of it's covered back over here. And this is just the point. So I need to let that set up. And as that's setting up, I'm going to come over here and we're going to put some highlights in there. And we're going to glaze some purples on there. And someone stole my green color that I was going to use, but we'll just use this. Okay, we're going to use a smaller dome brush. I'm going to take most of the paint out. We're going to just come in and stroke in some highlights. And you're pretty much right in the center. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is bring in just a little bit more with the lighter green color. Make sure I take some of the paint up. And we'll just stroke that in. Then what I want to do is come in and I'm going to take some of my base coat color from the flower. We're going to just pull that down on here. I'm going to shade the back of it without going in. That's going to join the flower and the stem together and not make it look like somehow this weird green thing is coming out of there. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with my little round brush and I'm going to just start putting in some highlights. I'm going into my next lightest color, covering a smaller area and putting in a little bit more highlight. Then since I could float this in or side load it in, but I'm going to take some of my darkest color and blend it in with what I originally put in, that beigey brown color. And we're going to just add a little bit of shading over here. By mixing it with the purple color, it's going to make it set into the flower a little bit more. There's times to create contrast and times to pull things together. The trick is knowing when to do what. Okay. So I'm just going back and forth. This is my mid-tone color. And I'm thinking that looks pretty good. So let me zoom out all the way. Whoop. So you can see it. So that's pretty much how you create a purple flower. You can see how I built up these two petals and they're balanced with this. I'm going to let this settle down. And if this is a little bit too bright, what I'll do is I'll glaze over it with some of my base coat color and it will settle it down. But right now, I really like the way it is. I'm thinking that this is really pretty. And I know that it will be a beautiful gift or help decorate your home somehow. And I really hope you enjoyed learning about how to create a realistic purple tulip. And I look forward to seeing you in more of my videos. Please make sure you subscribe and click on the bell so that you won't miss any of them, and give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Until next time, may painting always bring you joy. Bye-bye.